Another episode of Relational Leadership. We're excited to be with you. And again, we try to bring topics that fit your lifestyle and give you some good information, no matter whether you are a leader as a mom or the head of head CEO of a large company.
That's right.
So I'm Stephanie Clements.
And I am Shawn Dawley, and today's topic is boundaries in the workplace. Those hard to define lines whereby when we cross them, because we can't afford to say no, we get pulled in so many directions. So whether it's setting boundaries between you and your boss, you and the folks who answer to you, or even peers that consistently rely upon you, how do we establish those boundaries so that we do the most we can with what we got and not feel like we're being stretched so thin as to becoming ineffective?
Right. And I feel this one like all the way to my core. So I definitely think there's a lot of people out there who struggle with that. And it doesn't just say, boundaries work, it doesn't just have to be in the workplace. It's boundaries everywhere because
Sure.
you can, if you give too much, you don't have enough, eventually you run out.
Yeah.
And that can be, but it affects your ability to work.
Yeah.
If you've given so much that you run dry.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's becoming even increasingly more difficult to define those boundaries because you can be at work and you can get a text from your daughter who says, "Oh, by the way, I have a science fair project due tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
You can be at home and you can't help yourself, at least you think you can, and you pull out your email and you see that a colleague says there's this urgent issue at work. So the very boundary between work and home has changed dramatically over the past 20 years.
Yeah, we're connected to all of it 24/7 anymore if we allow ourselves to be.
If we allow ourselves to be, and it's really hard. You think, well, I've got nothing to do for the next 30 minutes. I'm just going to quickly jump on, just real quick. I'm going to jump on. And sure enough, you may be on and off that work email in 30 seconds. But what you saw in your inbox suddenly begins to take up, space in your brain, and it's occupying your thoughts an hour and a half later.
Sure.
Right? So no, it's definitely an art. But I think maybe today we could talk about some functional takeaways that might be able to help us with this.
So I know for myself, some of the struggles have been, I do a lot of different things, and I've changed careers, but one of my last careers, everything was an emergency because it was in payments and things like that. And no matter, I could be planning something with my kids and I'd get a phone call that somebody needed something. And it's like, sorry, kids, we're not going to get to go do that right now. I've got to go take care of this. And, and not everybody in that industry gave that level of service. Whereas, I, instead of going, hey, you can call customer service, it was, I will take care of you personally.
Yeah.
And that was, looking back, and eventually I was like, I've got to get out of this industry because I don't have a life.
Yeah.
And so instead of it having made that career something that was manageable, to me, the only solution, the only way out, because I had set so many precedences of you can call me for anything.
Right. That's
that it was like, I just have to get out and start over.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
So there's ways, there are ways to do that. And, we also talked a little bit, and I don't know that you've looked into it, but the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I took the Enneagram. I'm a 2, and this is very much my personality. But it doesn't mean that I have to be stuck at that.
Sure. So for those who don't know, an Enneagram is one of any number of what are called psychometric self-reporting assessments, whereby you answer a battery of questions. And it's not a really significant number, but after 30, 40, 50, 60 questions on a scale of inaccurate to completely accurate, you answer the questions, and then it will tell you, based on how you responded, your personality traits and dispositions. And it's interesting how accurate
It's
how
a
accurate
little
they
scary
can be.
how
You know, we
accurate
all want to
it
believe
is.
that we are such complex and special, sophisticated creatures that only a team of world-renowned neuroscientists who spent weeks studying us could begin to crack the code. No,
Sure.
we're really not that different from each other,
Hmm.
right? So now there's a spectrum of personalities, but it's amazing how penetrating these questions are. And after just a 15-minute test, they can give you those insights. And as
Yeah.
I'm reading, I'm like, yep, yep, yep. It's almost like, have you all been following me around for the
Right,
past 2
right.
weeks?
Well, even some of the things, I work with some personal coaching, and I totally believe in, like, if you go to in business coaching and things like that, because if you are a professional baseball player,
Hmm.
they still need coaching.
Absolutely.
They know what they're doing
Sure.
overall, but you still need coaching
That's
to
right.
tweak things.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, this is kind of one of the areas that we're working on in my coaching sessions, is figuring out setting those boundaries
Yeah.
and things like that, because it just is. It's so important, and it keeps you from also disappointing other people because you've overbooked yourself or overdone it,
Yeah.
and then you didn't give the level that you really should have.
And that's probably the ultimate and most logical end state, is that
Hmm.
eventually, if you say yes to enough things and to enough people, by definition, because you may be Wonder Woman, but even Wonder Woman had limits, you eventually overextend yourself and you stop being great at a few things and you start being good at more things. And eventually you're just kind of marginal or bad at a whole bunch of things.
Right,
And that
right.
tends to be where we end up.
Yeah,
And sometimes that's the wake up call when
yeah,
suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I let him down. I can't believe I didn't fulfill that. You realize, wait a minute, that's not like me. I'm not usually one who over promises and under delivers. It's usually the other way around. Sometimes that's the wake up call. Like,
yeah.
okay,
That it's time to
I,
reset and
yeah, I'm very human and I
right,
have limits and I have exceeded them. Right.
right. So one of the things that tips that I'm finding is, first, we've got to set what's really important to us. I mean, if we don't know what we want to value and keep, we've
Yeah.
got to set those values of, okay, my personal care, taking time for me, that's going to be important.
Hmm.
Spending time with my family, that's going to be important. Because, and I used to struggle too with, should I shouldn't be the one at the center. I'm not worried about me. I just worry about everybody else.
Sure.
But it goes back to the whole airplane putting on your
Thank
own
you.
oxygen
Yes.
mask.
Yes. Thank you.
You
Perfect
have to do
example.
self
Yes.
care
Yes.
so that you can continue
Yes.
to give. And if you don't take time for that, then you get spent.
Yeah. So I discovered years ago that psychologists come in two varieties.
Only
Those
two?
only two.
Okay.
You can divide them into two camps. Those that are licensed to practice,
Uh-huh.
and the rest of us who practice without a license. Because
Right.
if
Oh,
you have
absolutely.
a single relationship on this planet, you practice psychology. You may not be
Absolutely.
good at it, but
Right.
you are a practicing psychologist. So, in my meager attempt to practice the
Right,
craft
right,
without
right.
license today, I would ask, where do you think that comes from? Like for you, the willingness to sometimes, against your better judgment, say, sure, I'll do it. Yes, I'll be there. Yeah, you can send it to me. Yeah, I'll take care of it. Where, on some level, to the extent you'd like to share, where do you think that comes from?
Well, you said, some of it is just my innate personality,
Yeah.
but that I do believe that's a level of wanting to be accepted, wanting to be, and as you're younger and you're wanting to do that, what was fed at that point, what actions
Yeah.
were rewarded,
Yeah.
and by helping somebody, you're almost always going to get some praise,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
You helped, blah, blah, so then you get used to, and then maybe when you're not, nobody is noticing.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, I'm over here and nobody pays attention. But when I go help, they pay attention.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's a lot of different things. That's just, one
Yeah.
small area, but it is, very natural for me to jump into that.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I've done, family is very, very important. And, I'm busy, my kids are busy, everybody's got stuff going. We blocked off Tuesday nights. That is my family night.
Okay.
Nothing else gets in the way, and everybody knows it. Sorry, it's Tuesday night. And they're like, oh yeah, it's family night.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and during that time, I'm not accessible. So, that is one area that I have
Okay.
done where I've lacked, as in probably the self-care and actually taking
Yeah.
time. I've gotten massage gift cards. I've got a membership somewhere.
Somewhere.
I've taken one massage in the last 5 years. I'm like, that would be really nice to go do, but
Well, yeah. The best intentions, right? Like,
right. I'm like, maybe if I join, I'll actually go. Kind of like the gym.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Every month when I see the auto draft of Planet Fitness, that should inspire me to actually
Right,
go.
right.
Yeah.
So that's one of the areas I'm really focusing on this year
Yeah.
to start taking better care of me and taking time.
And that's, I think, maybe a place that not all, but a lot of people get at some point in their professional life, where they begin to realize, I need to be as proactive at scheduling things like time for myself, time for my family, as if I was scheduling anything else. Because,
Yeah.
If I will take the time to schedule on both paper and in my calendar on my phone a 30-minute appointment with a potential client, well, my grandkids are more important to me than that person. Where am I scheduling them?
Right.
And I think what happens lots of times is, because we do have, these loving intentions, we just assume whatever the white space is in the calendar, it will magically fill up with things that we do cherish.
Sure.
Time with, and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Sometimes it just becomes a blank spot that okay, you can make one more commitment, just one more.
Yeah.
Okay, just one more.
Right.
And before you know it, your week is filled up and you're like, well, I haven't prioritized things that I tell myself are important to me. And it gets away from
time
us.
blocking. I mean, you have to, and if you just go ahead and schedule them out. So that is, that is my own personal goal, is to get these things, get things scheduled, and then block off. I know my Outlook tries to automatically put in my focus time each day on my email. So it adds to my calendar each day, like what's considered, where it sees openings and says focus time.
Okay.
And I never pay attention to it because I'm just like, no, that's not gonna be a good time for me to focus. I need, where it's supposed to be, you're not doing other appointments, you're not doing you're actually, but I think, so that's a good starting point, because if you use Microsoft Office and, and the Outlook email, it tries to, again, automatically tell you, hey, you need to have this much interaction time, you need to have this much focus time, you need to, these kind of things. Okay. So it's good, and it tries to guide me. I just haven't always done it. But I do need to put, some specific things, through the month where I know that I'm doing that for myself.
Okay. So, I'd asked you, what is some of the root cause of this eagerness to constantly, please folks. And like for me, I had a very average to subpar K through 12 experience. I wasn't exceptionally gifted as a student. I was on a lot of teams, but I was never the star athlete. So it wasn't until I began to enjoy some success as a young professional that I was receiving some, I dare say, accolades relative to my peer group. And for a kid that was a very much C student in high school and elementary school, and for a guy that came off the bench as much as he started, this was like the first time that within a peer group, I was being recognized for being, let's say, above average.
Sure.
And on some level, I think we overuse the word addiction, but I think on some level I became moderately almost addicted to the external
Sure.
validation, right?
Right,
So I
right.
was deriving some intrinsic value knowing that I was asked to do something and I did a good job.
Sorry.
That in and of itself was a reward. But I acknowledge that I was becoming increasingly inclined to keep wanting to seek that approval. Like I found myself wanting the praise,
Sure.
right? And again, we all want it, but that line between want and need, I think, is where we can sometimes begin to struggle.
Well, one of the other personality tests, that you can take, the 5 love languages. And some are more, I think that we have all 5 in us. It's just which ones are more. And so, words of affirmation or something like that, but knowing that and working with other people too, I think it's really important to have personality tests done with your employees because it lets you know how you're
Yeah.
going to interact with them.
Yeah.
And, we'll probably get into some of these Enneagram tests, and information or some of these on another show.
That'd be a fun show where we both show up with our results and then we try to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That could be an interesting discovery session.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but discussing possibly how we do that, how those affect your style of leadership
Mm-hmm.
and whatever. But I do think that, all of that, our personality still great, whether it's words of affirmation is kind of your top thing that you need to hear that you're doing that good job,
Sure.
and that you've
Yeah.
exceeded and, and succeeded. So, whereas somebody else may be like, no, I like to fly under the radar. I know I'm doing my job well and I do it, but I don't need anybody to pay attention. Just let me do it and go on about that.
So I'd be curious to know, where you come down on this, and that it's one thing to always say, or mostly say yes to peers
Mhm.
or people for whom we've worked. And early in my career, those were the times I kept saying yes over and over and over.
Right.
But eventually I found myself in positions of leadership, and I found that I would sometimes not micromanage, but I almost had a hard time letting go and committing myself to helping
Right.
get into the work of people that reported to me. Do you feel like sometimes you have a hard time saying no to people that work for you, and you end up finding yourself doing some of their work for them? Or
On occasion with that, as a business owner, I've certainly, I've had to do all of the jobs,
Yeah.
at certain times. And so, I think that's more of a delegation thing, but also whether you have faith in their ability to do
Sure.
things. And if you don't, then you tend to be doing both
Yeah.
your job and their job.
Yeah.
But, right now I'm really blessed with a great team there, but clients in general, and I answer this all the time. Somebody will go, hey, I need to ask you a favor. And I'm like, well, the answer is going to be yes. So what is it? What am I doing?
Yeah. Well,
and, so, because I have been that
yeah,
yes man.
sure. Yeah.
I actually, had a friend and had come over and we watched that movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey. Yeah. Yeah.
And they told me, they said, okay, here's the deal. He has to say yes all the time, but you got to watch this movie and then you've got to just say no to everything for a while. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. This goes against your nature.
Right.
So, one of the blessings when you have gone through something and you've developed some insights and wisdom is that it prepares you in a leadership capacity to be sensitive to people that are exhibiting those same behaviors. And so when I, took on different commands or even in the corporate world, executive roles, I would quickly discern, okay, who's the person in here that come heck or high water will not let something fail? Who's the person that I can call about anything for any time that will always say, yes, I will
Right.
do it. And it's good to identify those people and know who
Mm-hmm.
they are. Not because they're the person that you throw the bat signal up into the sky every time, but okay, now you're in a position of leadership to be sensitive to not burn them out,
Right. Right.
because it's easy as the boss who's being bombarded with all these incoming challenges and problems to know, well, if I go to Bobby or I go to Mary Sue, I
Right.
can ship this and they're going to get it done. So I know for me, as a recovering workaholic,
Yeah.
I can detect that in other people, and it puts me in a better position to know, okay, the time may come when I need them to run through a
Right.
brick wall for me, but I need to use that sparingly. Because if I don't protect them from themselves until they figure this out about themselves, um, I'll end up burning out one
Right.
of my all stars.
Right.
And
Right.
then what? So
Well, and that, there's the old saying that if you want something done, find the busiest person that you know, or in your and give it to
yeah,
them. It will get
yeah,
done, but it's not, it's
that's
not
not
fair to that
sustainable.
busiest person, because yes, I think you and I both are people, you give us a task and we're going to go and we're going to make it happen, and
Yeah.
but which is good, because you want to rise in an
Hmm.
industry and things like that, but you do have to be careful, because everybody's like, oh, well, we know she can do it or he can do it,
Yeah.
and next thing you know,
Yeah.
and those people who like that, tend to go, oh yeah, I can accept that challenge, I can accept that challenge, and
Yeah.
again, you're
Um, we've been talking about basically saying no to others. Like sometimes you just got to, whether it's the boss or a colleague or somebody that works for you. But um, I figured out after a while that I needed to say no to myself
Mhm.
sometimes. And by that, what I mean is, like in a previous life as a combat pilot, I can remember some days like going into the ready room, like on a deployment, and looking at the board and seeing, okay, tomorrow we're flying a mission, a very benign combat sortie into, let's say, Herat in Western Afghanistan, which is very permissive environment at the time, low threat, and thinking like, oh, that's boring, like, and catch myself like, well, what did you want it to say? That you're going to fly some like psyops leaflet
Right,
drop
right.
into some Taliban stronghold? And so I recognized that after a while, I was becoming like habituated to the adrenaline rush of some
Yeah,
of these, profiles and mission sorties, and I realized, okay, that has the seeds of like a problem. When you
right.
suddenly like are almost implicitly, yearning for the rush, and when I say the rush, I'm not the guy that goes skydiving on the weekends. I don't go rock climbing without safety gear. I'm the guy that drives 55 miles an hour on the water. So I'm very risk averse, but
Which is crazy to think as a
but
yeah.
um,
I'm the one that goes skydiving.
but I can recall like getting back from a challenging mission profile where we were on a low level route with night vision goggles on, and we're dropping leaflets onto some Taliban, stronghold village, and then you get back and you land, and there's this certain feeling that can
Sure.
generate that's maybe hard to capture elsewhere. But I don't think that physiologically it's necessarily that unlike the rush you might get from closing a big deal, the rush you
Yeah,
might get from landing a big client. And eventually, as professionals, there might be things within our professional capacity that we start to chase. Like, oh, the
absolutely.
feel. I mean, the commission check is great, but there's something aside from that, like,
Did it?
right,
Yeah,
right. And again, where's that line
right.
between satisfaction and,
Well, and I see that regularly. I mean, of course, I work in the real estate industry,
yeah,
and I watch some of these realtors who have gone so gung ho, and I mean I mean, I think all of them love when they get a deal closed,
sure,
and whatever,
absolutely,
but you can there too, because I've watched several of them let go of their life,
yeah,
for that deal, And when they're doing so many on their own, and there comes a point there, that's difficult because you're so busy you don't have time to train somebody to help you.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So there's no time to sharpen the axe while you're just have to keep going and going and going. And, carrying on a conversation with them can be difficult because they're always, they've got all these different clients and things
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
all hours of the day and night.
Sure.
And so I think definitely but I do watch some who are able to set clear boundaries. And someone say, after 8 o'clock, I don't answer my phone.
Yeah.
And whatever, so they do protect that time. So I think, especially in the industry that I work around, that those boundaries are really important and very difficult.
Yeah. So you've actually given some great tangible, takeaways here as we've been talking. Um, One is like early the way you started because you talked about values. I heard it once said before, like in military planning, that if you know what your strategic objective is, tactical decisions get a little bit easier,
Right.
because you can evaluate each singular decision. Okay, does this map to the goal, right? And so I think we would all, if pressed, articulate the most important things in my life are, my family, my faith. I mean,
Right.
these things that are real, but to some degree, kind of like these esoteric, relationships. But tying it into some very specific guidance you gave is like setting like physical boundaries. Like, okay, this is the time. This is at this point on the clock that stops.
Right.
And then disciplining, right? Is knowing is one thing, but disciplining yourself. But I think sometimes the answers to some of these challenges really might be a little more simple than we might make them out to be. And so some of this guidance you've given is pretty, I think, specific and straightforward.
Yeah.
This is the day of the week. You do not bother me. This is the time.
What's the most important. Take your top three. If it's taking care of yourself, spending time with family, doing some volunteer work, or, for me, travel, things like that, figure out at least your top three most important things that you want time for, and just start sitting down at your calendar and scheduling them, and then protecting them. Like I said, my Tuesday nights with my kids, my son had asked me, well, does it have to be every Tuesday night? He's a teenager. He wants to go, sometimes my friends, they want to do things on Tuesdays. And I was like, I only have so many Tuesday nights left with you.
Yeah.
And if we start saying, okay, well, this one we don't have to, or this one we don't have to, it will start falling apart.
Yeah.
So you either fully protect it. And I said, I get asked to do a lot of things. There's a lot of things going on that sometimes I would really like to do on Tuesday night, but it doesn't matter. I can be available 6 other nights.
Yeah.
So.
Sure. Well, that's beautiful the way you articulated that there's only so many Tuesdays left, right? So my wife and I's youngest is 22, and he's graduating this weekend from IU. And boy, oh boy, 20 years goes by.
So fast.
Very fast, right? When people who know that I've got kids that are older now, they'll ask me, what was it like, when they were teenagers? And what was it like in high school? What I'll say is the years go by like that.
Yeah.
But within that, there were some very long nights.
For sure. Some years and some weeks or whatever.
So there was times. That's right. There was times where Friday from 9 o'clock at night until Saturday at 2 a.m. was an eternity.
Yes.
But from the time that he was sitting on my knee because he had fallen down, gotten a boo-boo on his bike, until him graduating from Indiana University, that went by scary fast.
Yes, right.
And so these are the things that, as I'm saying it out loud, I remember as a young parent, middle-aged men telling me, boy, I'm telling you, cherish these times because
Yeah.
they'll go by really quick. And then, things we've always heard before that I think is germane to this conversation, which is, look, we're not trust fund babies. We have to leave the cave every day and kill something and drag it back. We have to provide, right? We have to put that proverbial roof over the head. But at some point, and it's a shifting line, we have to make those decisions. And sometimes decisions that affect, family and work are in conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all heard this before. Nobody has ever lied around on their deathbed wishing they could have traded more time with friends and family for just one more client, just one more deal. And again, I'm not preaching to you to manage your life, but I think these are things we all implicitly understand at a strategic level. Do we make those tactical decisions every day that reflect that bigger objective?
Right. So if you take nothing else away, just the key points are time blocking and figuring out what you want to time block for. And, I think that can be, like, again, whether you are a mom of young children, you have to take some time and say, okay, you're going to bed, and from this time to this time, it's my time. I'm going to sit and have my ice cream, or I'm going to have my glass of wine, or I'm going to whatever.
Your airline oxygen mask analogy is apropos. That's exactly right.
Right.
Take care
and
of
that was
yourself
something I totally struggled with when I first heard it. And I had a small child, and I was like, I'm not giving my I'm saving him first,
Right.
But you understand. But as you get older, you understand it more. There is a reason.
Well, the real trick is when you're traveling with two kids.
Yeah,
because if they're old enough to remember, they're always going to ask, Mom, why did you put the mask on him before you put it on me?
Right.
Maybe that's for another episode, deciding which of your kids you like better. That's coming up in a future episode.
Right. Yeah. That trades out daily too. Sometimes.
Yes.
Well, we thank you for joining us and listening. And you can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and of course YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn. So we just ask, if you like it and felt like there was some value added to you, we would appreciate you sharing it. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
All right. So long. See you then.
Bye.